Without further ado, I would love to introduce our first speaker, Rick Huijbregts. He's the Vice President of the Internet of Everything Industry Transformation Team, and he also looks after Cisco Canada's Smart and Connected Communities practice. His team of industry subject matter experts pave the way for business transformation for Cisco's customers. Rick holds a bachelor's degree in construction management, a master's degree in real estate development and project management from Delft University, and a doctorate from Harvard University with a specialization in real estate technology and investment management. Clearly an underachiever. Rick currently is faculty member at the Harvard University GSD Executive Education, focusing on topics of smart cities and smart buildings. Mr. Huijbregts is the recipient of the Queen Elizabeth Royal Jubilee Award for his groundbreaking work in community innovation in Canada, and was named top 35 people to watch in the industry by Realcomm. Please allow me to introduce and help me to introduce Rick Huijbregts, Cisco.
Thank you.
There you go. If you need it, here's for you.
Yes, I was
there you
looking
go.
for the clicker. And the red light. Where is the alarm, Howard, that goes off when I stop? Is there one?
Just yell at us.
Oh, all right.
Get the cane out.
All right, great. So thank you very much for having me. This is exciting. It's always exciting to see a city start a journey from smart projects to becoming a smart city. Being part of Cisco, we've seen many cities starting this journey. This one is particularly of interest to me because it allows me to travel less because I live in Markham, about 5 minutes away from here. So you're going to probably see a lot of me, certainly in the morning and at night, to avoid the DVP. So I'm going to just, in the next 20 minutes or so, set a little bit of the tone, the role of technology in the smart city journey. And before I do that, I think there's slides, right? There you go. I wanted to ask a question. Who has heard of selfie? Everybody now. Now be honest. If I would have asked this a year ago, who would have raised their hand? 1, 2, 3, well, still quite a few. So I start this new thing. I do selfies now. So I'm going to take a quick selfie with you guys. And then you can kind of follow me, and then we can all tweet afterwards. There you go. That's worked great. Excellent. And that goes on Twitter later. Come to speak of it, who has a Twitter account? A lot. Who had it 5 years ago? Who heard of Twitter 8 years ago? Well, that can only be a very few, because the younger ones, yeah. Because it really didn't exist that long. Now, granted, though, a selfie is not new. Robert Cornelius took his first selfie in 1839. He didn't have to worry about posting it on Twitter and if his friends would unlike him online on Facebook because they didn't like the way he wrote it or tweeted about it. His life, I'm sure, had lots of challenges, but the world he lived in looked very, very different from the world that we live in today. And no matter if you're a councillor or a mayor or a business leader in a city like Markham or a citizen, we're all kind of pressured and challenged by some major trends that are hitting all of us and having an impact, a profound impact, frankly, on all our lives. First one is social and demographics shifts, and Councillor Shore talked about it. 50% of people live in cities in the next 15 to 20 years. We think this is about 70%. Markham, a great example where the influx is rather large, very high mix of ethnic backgrounds and diversity. And this is kind of the makeup, the world we live in, and in which cities need to start to compete with one another, not just within Canada, but really start to compete with one another around the world as well. The other one is economic shifts. We've seen, as never really before, our competitors maybe not be necessarily within Canada or not even in the US. It's competing with Asia or emerging countries where the economies are tremendously booming and where we have to figure out new ways of adding value to kind of a global economy. Thirdly, environmental challenges. And again, Howard Short mentioned that 80% of today's carbon footprint is already coming from cities. 70% of all energy used is in cities. 40% of all energy used, almost 50%, is in the buildings that we occupy. And no matter if we believe or not believe in climate change, but this is not a sustainable way of doing things. We have to rethink and think wisely about alternative energy and new ways of supporting economic growth. And then third, and certainly not last, maybe the newest up-and-comer and the fastest transformation that is hitting all of us is the technology trends that are happening around us. And I'll start with a few cliches that you have all seen. First one is Western Union in 1875 saying the telephone has way too many shortcomings. It's never going to be a means of real communication. This was a very valid point then. I'm not showing, by the way, these to say, oh, look how stupid these people were. They were really wrong, because we were all wrong, and we're probably wrong today about things we don't know that are going to happen 5 years or 10 years from now. Another one, and you've seen this one, Henry Ford saying, yeah, everyone has seen this, right? If I would have asked the people, they would have asked for faster horses. And I show that one because if we would have asked people here in the room, what is a smart city? We'd probably get very different answers, and probably very few people would have thought about garbage bins that tell the city when they need to be emptied. And this trend and what is possible and what's coming only will accelerate, and it's almost the world of imagination that we need to start to capture and capitalize on. Another one is Thomas Watson said that in the world there's really only room, a market for 5 computers. Now, granted, he said this in 1943, which is pretty impressive. But again, there we've seen that not only we all had a computer on our desk, and probably most of you are already removing those computers off our desk. So maybe at the end of the day, he's right. Because how many people still have a PC or a device on their desk? So the change is happening very, very fast, and it's having amazing impact on everything we do. So here's a picture of Thomas Edison in 1876, trying out his first new gadget, his phone, a phone, which really has been replaced by devices that you all have sitting in your pocket. And it's not a phone anymore, it's a smart device, does lots of other different things. And you probably all know that the phone that you have in your pocket today has more processing power, more memory, more capacity than all computers combined used in 1969 to support the Apollo mission to the moon. That sits now on this device that you have in your pocket. And that's only 40-some years ago. Next is books. Not to say we don't sell books anymore, but that world is changing very, very fast. And instead of pile and pile of books, we're now carrying tablets. Some of us very large tablets. And it's not just about reading books. It's about managing every aspect of our life. It becomes our PC, our memory, our family pictures. It's everything that we do. And already, in a very short amount of time, we have seen tablets from not being existent to last year being almost 42% of all computer sales, expected by 2017 to be more than PCs and laptops combined. And this is a shift again. We're talking about 4 or 5 years that none of us, I'm sure none of us would have seen coming, because if you saw it coming, you wouldn't be here, you would be on your island somewhere. And then the last one is, has anybody seen this picture, and do you know where this was taken? Anybody? I don't hear it. The Vatican, that's right. This was in 2005, the installation of Pope Benedict. Sorry, I don't have all my popes straight. Here's 2013, the installation of Pope Francis. And you see, everyone has a tablet. Everyone uses their phone to take pictures and selfies and put it on Twitter and start to share it before the current day media has even the ability to capture it. And this is the world we live in. This is the citizens that are living in Markham, and the business in a world in which the businesses in Markham try to compete, not just within Markham and there are other companies in Markham, but around the world. And we have to start to think about how to create an infrastructure, and not just physical infrastructure, but a people infrastructure, collaboration infrastructure to support this tremendous change and this rapid transformation, and to create an environment where we all can flourish and kind of stay ahead. And I'm going to talk about 5 kind of technology trends that are really driving this, and they're really over the last 5 years, and they're going to have a tremendous impact in the next couple of years. First one is mobility and video. Already, in a very short amount of time, 5 years, we see today that 91% of all internet traffic is generated by video. It's the Hulus and the YouTubes and the FaceTimes. So 91% of all video traffic generated by video today. In terms of mobility, and you mentioned it, and Rogers is here, and Mansell maybe briefly talking about it, but we're seeing a tremendous uptake of the need for mobility. We're already seeing businesses in North America, 50% of workers are mobile workers. There's going to be 70% in the next few years. This is going to have a tremendous change on the buildings we build, the offices we generate, the life that we have, the whole life, work-life balancing is changing, and that hasn't changed to how we organize our cities and deliver services in our cities. We see mobility and video probably the biggest kind of driver of how we change the way we collaborate, how we work together, and really kind of as a new way of platform to make a community play a much different role in a global world. And as an example, you're going to have Brad Woodside, the mayor of Fredericton, actually be here using telepresence video. And hopefully, and we're already seeing this, that not only helps us reduce travel, but makes all of us probably a lot more productive, while yet at the same time still have the same high quality of collaboration and dialogue. Apps. We really live in the world of apps creation. Today, almost 2,500 apps are being launched each and every day, and it's apps that you have on your mobile devices. That's almost 15,000 apps every week, and compare that to about 300 books being published every week and 30 movies being launched every week. Lots of these apps we probably never will hear of. Most of them will not succeed or become anything real, but some of them may have an immense impact on how we do the most simple thing. And it's, the mayor talked about it earlier, it's little apps on how you report potholes or how do you look at where the closest park is. It starts to completely give us opportunities to rethink how we use information, how we use technology, and how we collaborate with one another. And it's this world that is really going to create the bridge between consumers and technology and businesses, because this is how we get to the consumers, and this is how the consumers interact with information and data. And Mark mentioned it briefly. It's about data and big data. The third one is the Internet of Things. And what that basically means is that we don't really live in a world anymore that's characterized as the Internet of people, where we communicate using the Internet, but where we now live in a world where things, machines, devices are starting to communicate with one another. We believe that today there's about 13 billion smart objects, devices, connected to the Internet, communicate with one another. And yes, that includes our phones and our PCs, but it also includes the police car with its sensor in it, and the garbage bin with its sensor in it, and they're all starting to communicate with the same infrastructure, the same capabilities. By 2020, we think there's about between 40 and 50 billion smart devices being connected. And we think that by 2030, this could very well be 1 trillion, because every little device, everything that's digital, everything that could be addressable, could become a node that pushes out information that can be used in whole new ways if we start to think about the Internet in a very different way. Mansell will talk about what this really does for cities too, and really this trend, kind of put some color around this trend, which we believe is really, really big. And leads to the, I guess, realization of big data. And we've been talking about big data and analytics for a little while, but as more and more devices come online and there's more things, pulsing information that can be accessed, we really need to rethink how we use this data, how we read it, how we add insight and intelligence to it. So if we look, and this is a little bit hard to read, but in 2012, we generated more data than all 5,000 years previously combined. So in 1 year, that's 2 years ago, more data of how we're uploading things and how we're generating things. And in the decade that we live in today, the digital universe will grow 50-fold. That's a lot of bits and bytes. That's a lot of information moving around. We're going to need a lot of data centers and processing power and new ways of managing this data and analyze it and adding value to it. And that kind of introduces the cloud, because we can't put all that data anymore on devices like this. It's too big, so we need to put it in places where it makes sense, where it's maybe cheap to manage, where we can process it much faster, and where we can start to share it in ways it's never done before. It's expected that of this tremendous amount of data that will grow 50 times in the decade we live in, over 35% of it will reside in the cloud on services and servers and hardware that does not reside in our offices or on our PCs, but that sits somewhere with Amazon or some other cloud that already exists, and that we're going to see tremendous growth, tremendous opportunities. Municipalities will be reaching out to the cloud for so many reasons, in terms of not having to invest in necessarily the infrastructure to support it. Canada actually is predicted to be one of the biggest consumers of cloud-based services in government, and it's expected that by the end of this decade, over 25%, which still doesn't sound like a lot, but 25% of all IT spend in government and municipalities will be cloud-based services and cloud-based capabilities. So I see those 5 trends as kind of key triggers and catalysts that are really starting to reshape or give us tools to rethink how we deliver services to our citizens, how our businesses serve their customers and create economic opportunity, how governments and cities and businesses optimize their back offices and become more productive. And it's those tools that we really start to now apply to solving real business issues, because it's not about the technology. It's not about the cloud or big data. And I think Mark said it in terms of turning geek talk and street talk. People necessarily don't care about any of this. This happens around them, to them, or it happens without them necessarily needing to know. It isn't what we apply all this for. And it is about delivering growth and productivity opportunities to really kind of emphasizing economic development, for instance, for a city like Markham. It is about creating new business models and new business opportunities. New companies, new startups will come and tap into this opportunity. And we're already trying to do this, but this technology network of capabilities will give us all these new reasons to explore new ways of doing business. It is about completely transforming user experiences and expectations. And I think it was Mark mentioned the Nest this morning. I mean, a thermostat. Who would have knew that that could be sexy and worth $3 billion to a company like Google? But start to think about how this technology becomes part of our daily life, and it becomes so user-friendly. And that's the expectation of our citizens here in the city and our businesses in the city, that we have to, again, create platforms and an infrastructure for. And globalization. Yes, Markham is a kind of a tech center, but a lot of the companies here are global companies. We are competing in a global world. We have to start to think, no matter how small most your business is, how can we really participate in this rapidly changing global environment? And last, but certainly not least, how do we do all this in a very secure way and looking at regulatory compliance? And I'm not sure how far we go into discussing this, but this, I'm sure, is on everybody's mind in terms of data security and privacy and all those topics we hear all the time. And that cannot be an afterthought. All that has to be thought through as we design this, as we plan this, as we have the conversations on how to use technology to make a smarter city. And the sad thing is, although this may all make sense, but to our next generation everything, the next generation citizen, the next generation workforce, our future bosses, this is all common sense. Nobody of that age or a little bit older questions mobility or mobile devices or a tablet, like, why do you need it? I mean, this is all second nature. This is the world we now live in. And we have to therefore think in a progressive way, because we also know that in Canada by 2030, 25% of our citizens are over 60 years old. That does not necessarily mean we're going to stick everyone a smart device in their hands, because they may not want to do this. So we have to create an environment that caters to older generations, younger generations, but really set us up for a whole new future that we know is coming and we frankly know is there. So the pace of innovation is accelerating faster and faster and faster. And now there's a little bit of an eyesore diagram, the way we drew it out, but if you look at the green dark line, it kind of shows over the horizontal how many years did it take to how much % of the population to adopt this technology. So it took about 110 years, and we're still not at 100% adoption of cars, for instance. 80% of the world population, it's probably a little bit higher now, would have access to a car. You go towards the left, and you look at cellular, PC, mobile. Countries where they don't have cars or where they don't have proper running water, mobile devices are probably the #1 piece of technology that they have to communicate with each other. And the speed of consuming this technology and absorbing it and making it part of life is kind of becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. And look at the tablet environment that we just talked about. And this is challenging because we build buildings, and Ted will speak about that. We spent 3 years planning it and 2 years building it, and we need buildings stand there for 15 years, but we know the world around it is becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. We create governance and policy, and we create environments for citizens to work in and to be productive in, knowing again that the time horizon we think about and the capabilities that we have in front of us changes so fast. We have to be swift and start to rethink how we work together to stay productive and ahead in this very fast changing world. So that is all leading. The technology is leading, the acceleration is leading, and a lot of it is kind of really driven by the internet. The internet is only 23 years old. It's still very young too. 1990, it became publicly available. There's about 1,000 websites by the end of that year, about 1 million people using it. We all know where it is now. And the acceleration of adoption and importance has been staggering. By 2011 or 2012, 20 households in the US would generate more internet traffic than all North America internet traffic combined in 2008.